I think most people are familiar that each winter we have the opportunity to do retreat here at the Abbey. And maybe they're not as familiar with the fact that we also do something called Varsa, usually around the same time, but the two retreats are different. So the winter retreat is focused on either a deity or a topic, like the four establishments of mindfulness. And the Varsa is a particular ritual that the Sangha do to focus on our practice for a particular period of time, usually around 90 days. And while we're focusing on our practice, we're advised to refrain from pointing out the faults of others or criticizing or giving admonishment, things like that. Sounds easy enough to do, but I find for myself it takes me a week or two to 3, 4 to wind down that habit. So it's a very good practice. And so we need a few tools in our pocket to help us to be able to do that refraining so that we can really put all that practice focused on our own mind and our own practice that we're doing. Last time I did a BBC, I talked about projections. And so that's certainly one way that we can slow down looking externally for the causes of our suffering and instead asking ourselves, well, what is this person reminding me of? Is it something in myself that I'm not quite comfortable with and I'm projecting that onto the other person? So that can be helpful. But another tool that I've found recently is found in the 7-point thought transformation text. And it's in the third, I think it's the third section, the third point, where it's talking about transforming adversity. Transforming adverse circumstances into the path. And so that has a number of points too, but the one that really grabbed me was the one on by way of thought, and particularly by way of thought using reasoning. So if we think about this, actually the slogan that goes along with this says, when the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, transform adverse circumstances into the path to enlightenment. Or maybe you are familiar with the verse from the Guru Puja, at least the orange one, the orange translation that says, should even the environment and the beings therein be filled with the fruits of their karmic debts and unwished for sufferings pour down like rain, we seek your inspiration to take these miserable conditions as a path by seeing them as causes to exhaust the results of our negative karma. So we can think about the small insults that we might react to on a daily basis. Maybe someone doesn't smile at us in the morning, or someone criticizes something we do, or doesn't do something the way we like. Or maybe we get sick. You know, a lot of that is raining down on us right now in terms of the Omicron variant going around. So maybe we get sick. Any of these things, if we think about them, where is the problem coming from? Automatically it seems, instinctively it seems as if it's coming from outside. But when we think that way, as we've been taught, it shows that we're not making the connection, we're not connecting the dots between karma and our experiences. So going back to the teachings in the initial scope, we know from the general characteristics of karma that everything that we experience in our own body and mind, these are results of the karmic actions that we've created in the past. If we pay careful attention to the advice in this thought training text, then, when the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, how do we transform these adverse circumstances into the path? Well, first of all, it's thinking about, oh, this is coming because of my own karma. But that's not enough. We can take it a step further. We can also bring into our awareness the fact that by experiencing a suffering, it's exhausting, right? We're exhausting the seed that's giving rise to that result. So that can be a real benefit. In fact, when we think in that way, then we can see it as a benefit that we're actually experiencing some suffering. That's a bit of a leap, isn't it? Not only do we see it as a benefit, but we can actually transform our mind to the point where we start welcoming suffering. We see it as something that's truly going to benefit us on the path. And not only that, but we can actually wish that our suffering doesn't end. Try to imagine that. So maybe that's a bit of a leap for most of us, but start where you are and see how you go. So I was very impressed with this little section in how to generate bodhicitta. You can find this as a free PDF on the internet. Venerable Kadro referred to it when she was teaching the bodhicitta section in the Easy Path. And so I've gone back to this section, and River Rinpoche talks about how grateful he was for the kindness of his teachers to teach him again and again this seven-fold method, or the 7-point thought transformation methods, because he experienced incredible suffering in his life as the Chinese occupation. And he doesn't go into detail about that, but you can imagine. And he says that he got to the point where he could actually welcome the suffering that he experienced. And he describes it as torturous, so that gives you an idea. We're not just talking about small slights. And that he actually prayed for the suffering to continue so that he could purify his mind. So that may be far down the track for most of us, but even knowing about this, when there's suffering coming up in our mind, whether it's physical suffering or mental suffering, something's not going the way we like it, to have this mind training on hand is going to be very helpful, especially during retreat. So thinking about suffering comes about due to my own karma. By experiencing the suffering, I'm exhausting the cause. I can rejoice in that. And also I can begin to accept and even welcome the suffering that's happening, knowing that it's going to be beneficial for my long-term progress on the path. And also getting to the point where we're not bothered by much of what happens in our lives. We don't have to be afraid. That's the point, because we know how to work with it in our mind. At least that's the theory. So now comes the practice. And so if the examples that I talked about sound unbelievable, just keep in mind that those who can take suffering on the path with joy and look forward to more suffering, those are very, very advanced practitioners. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. Life in samsara gives us plenty of opportunities to work with suffering. We don't need to add more, so please don't go out and create more suffering for yourself. That's not the point here. Life will give us enough opportunities that we can practice with. And so we can begin by going back to the section on karma in the Lam Rim and really trying to understand how is it that we create suffering conditions in terms of rebirths and in terms of the experiences that come into our lives, in terms of our habits and the environment that we're born into. And then we can practice rejoicing that we're exhausting a karmic seed when we're experiencing suffering, that it's finishing. We're experiencing the result, it's finishing. So we can rejoice. And then eventually down the road, we can practice welcoming suffering into our lives. It might be a long, long time before we're going to go out looking for more suffering and hope it doesn't end. So please don't misunderstand. We have to practice where we are. Okay, enjoy.